Richard Mayer and other cognitive researchers argued that multimedia supports the way the human brain learns. Mayer created the multimedia principle, which is his idea that people can learn more deeply from words and pictures than from words alone. His theory suggests that the brain does not interpret a multimedia presentation of words, pictures, and auditory information in a mutually exclusive way. Rather, there should be an active process of prior knowledge, of filtering, selecting, organizing, and integrating information to create a personalized learning environment for the student. Mayer's model was formulated from theories of several prior researchers. A few of the highlighted researchers will be talked about more in depth later on in the presentation. You can see Mayer's model is comprised of 4 different sections. There are arrows indicating the flow of information being processed from words and pictures to eventual verbal and pictorial modeling, resulting in long-term memory. We will now go into depth into each section to talk more about the 4-part process. Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia model begins with the presentation. A typical presentation contains words and pictures. Now obviously if nobody views or listens to the presentation, it's useless. However, once there's a viewer, the information from the words and pictures is processed into the brain as a sensory memory. Looking back at Mayer's model, you can see how he interprets the flow of a multimedia presentation into a sensory memory. However, without the eyes and ears, there is no way of interpreting the words and the pictures. Words can be interpreted from the ears and the eyes, while the pictures are just interpreted from the eyes. Now that we've seen how words and pictures process to the eyes and ears, we'll look at how eyes and ears can create a sensory memory. Perhaps one of the biggest influences on Mayer's sensory memory portion of his model was derived from Snotz's model in 2005. Snotz believed that sensory memory is comprised of sensory registers. The 2 registers are eye to visual and ear to auditory. An example of these is in the transfer of information to working memory through reading with fingers, such as Braille, or a deaf person being able to hear by reading lips. I challenge you on the next slide to listen to the audio recording and see if a sensory memory is registered.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
Dr. King's speech is a great example of how your ears can create a memory. The second portion of Mayer's sensory model are the eyes. Looking at this picture can be disturbing, and rightfully so. Everyone remembers the Holocaust, and without words, this picture can trigger sensory memories such as sadness and anger. So far we have seen how information from the multimedia presentation is viewed and heard by the eyes and ears. Then we saw the information being processed and stored into sensory memory. Now we will look and see how sensory memory becomes a working memory. One of the first working memory models was Atkinson and Shiffrin's model in 1968. Atkinson and Shiffrin described memory in terms of information flowing through a system, similar to a computer with an input, process, and output. Information is then detected by the eyes and ears and becomes a sensory memory, like mentioned previously. If intended, the information will be stored into a short-term memory. If the short-term memory is rehearsed, then it will be stored into a long-term memory. If it's not rehearsed, then it will just remain a short-term memory and be forgotten later on. A man by the name of Alan Baddeley took Atkinson and Schriffrin's model and created a more complex model in order to interpret working memory. Baddeley's model consisted of 4 components: the central executive, the phonological loop, the episodic buffer, and the visual spatial sketchpad. The central executive acts as a supervisory system and controls the flow of information from and to its slave system, which are the phonological loop and the visual spatial sketchpad. The visual spatial sketchpad deals with visual and spatial information. Visual information refers to what things look like. Baddeley stated that it is likely that the visual spatial sketchpad plays an important role in helping us keep track of where we are in relation to other objects as we move through our environment. The phonological loop is a storage system for speech-based information. Baddeley states that it is simply a temporary storage for heard information, such as speech. The fourth component of Baddeley's model is the episodic buffer. The episodic buffer links to long-term memory. This is based off experiences. So, all of the short-term memories, along with an episodic buffer, create a long-term memory. Baddeley's model does a great job of showing how speech and language, short-term episodic memories, and visual semantics can make up a long-term memory. Mayer wanted to use his model to tailor it into a strategy of teaching. Let's take a closer look at the working memory portion of his model. Mayer suggests that once sensory memories are stored, they are then processed into selected sounds and images.
I have a dream.
Sounds can be organized with words to create a verbal model which utilizes words from the multimedia presentation to the student's ears as a short-term working memory. Images, like sounds, must also be organized into a pictorial model. Once both verbal and pictorial models are created, you have produced an optimized presentation that will tap into the student's short-term memory banks. With the verbal model and pictorial model completed, the last step is to integrate prior knowledge or long-term memory into the working memory portion. So how does prior knowledge affect the presentation? The Holocaust and famous speech from Dr. King will resonate with the learner because there is a prior knowledge and sensory memory associated with each picture and sound. Emotions from prior knowledge are effective tools to get working memory engaged because there is a sense of connection to the presentation. Mayer's cognitive learning of multimedia theory provides the ability to connect words and pictures with prior knowledge through sensory and working memories in order to effectively teach students throughout a presentation. Learning is an active process. The instructor's job is to filter, select, organize, and integrate information to enhance sensory working and long-term memories. In closing, Mayer's cognitive learning of multimedia theory proves that words and pictures are much more powerful than words alone.
I have a dream.